Wow. All right, let's do this. Just gonna wait and see if, well, not if, when YouTube is on here. 2 days in a row. Haven't done that in a very long time. Now I'm gonna mute this. Okay, I am live. It's the Nazarite bringing you Hebrew lore from days of yore. Hi there, hey there, and hello. KJB is here, and Sneezer is here. And maybe someone else, not sure. Anyway, hi there, and hello. It's Nazarite Awareness Week, the week of the Torah portion Nassau. And I am live from Jerusalem. I'm going to continue the chat from yesterday, and I want to also discuss hopefully a comment or two that were left. And I think I'll start with that. I think I'll start with a comment. Right, I'll say hi in the chat. So good to be live. And look, as if someone's already here and I have 3 likes. What fun. I don't take it for granted. That's for sure. I have a cup of tea here, I have my water here, and I'm ready to go. Robert Harrison is here. Hello. Hey, Robert. Speaking of Robert, I will read a question. Hey, Seek Truth is here. Shalom, shalom from Oklahoma. Hello, I hope y'all are having a good Wednesday. Let's read a comment. Let's read a comment from yesterday. From yesterday. Hang on a second. I thought I had it queued up. Okay, here. I'm assuming this is Robert, but it's from Paula's username. So Robert or Paula Harrison wrote, "Hey Jonathan, I have a question. I'm really confused about something. 2 Samuel 24:1 says that the anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he incited David against them to count Israel and Judah, something which is not to be done unless it is specified by God, basically, and in a certain way, right, with the half a shekel. And First Chronicles says that Satan stood up against Israel and incited David to count. I'm really confused. Was it the Lord or Satan? Thanks for your help." So the phrase used in Samuel is Af Adonai, the anger of Adonai, the anger of the Lord. The phrase used in Chronicles, in Divrei Yamim, is Satan. So Af means anger, and Satan means adversary. Both of them represent what's called the left side, or the left pillar, or the left hand. And so, even though they have different names, because they're a little different, they are both ultimately revelations of the divine attribute known as judgment, as din. And just about an hour ago, I need to stop watching YouTube, 5211 said, "Hebrew Nazarite, can you please explain in more detail?" And so I'll read what I wrote to him. I wrote that there are many different revelations of God, right? And God's judgment in itself has many revelations. Din, judgment, divine judgment, has many revelations, right? There's God as the Father, and God is revealed as the King, and God is revealed as the Judge, and God is revealed as... So I wrote, collectively, these are all known to come from the left pillar, the left hand, the left side, the other side, depending on the context. And there are different types of left-sidedness, right? There's higher and lower, positive, negative, random and precise, benevolent and malevolent, so to seemingly. And so I told him the adversarial element is there to challenge us, to cause us to overcome our own limitations and figure out new paths of, right, to gather our strengths and discover new ways of rising above our own selves. The wrathful and angry element, right, the anger of the Lord that burns, that's there for us to devise new ways to sweeten its bite, to soften its roughness, to turn it to the side of good through our actions. In the case of counting the people, the af, anger, it says from Adonai, Yod Hei Vav Hei. It doesn't say af Elohim, anger of Elohim. It says af Adonai, and Yod Hei Vav Hei, Adonai, is an attribute, a name that is closely associated with the middle pillar, with harmony, with balance, with beauty. In other words, it's bringing harmony and balance into creation through judgment. So doing something good seemingly through doing something bad. And Af and Satan, right, both of those names are connected in the sense that they are revelations of God's judgment, din. And it's on us to do it's on us to see what we do in the face of it, I said. So there are times, I told him, when God's judgment seems bad, and only in retrospect do we see the meaning. It's part and parcel of living in a world of knowledge of good and evil. And there's the famous story of Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef in the time of the Second Temple. Now, whether it actually happened or not is irrelevant. Right? Rabbi Akiva was traveling, and his light, right, his lamp, was put out at night, and his, what was it? He was with some sort of an animal, and it died. And so you could say, oh man, that's horrible. Why would God give this sage such a hard time that his fire goes out and his companion animal dies? And as it turns out, in the night, there were prowlers, right? People who were out for blood. And had the fire been burning and the animal been calling, they would have discovered Rabbi Akiva. But because the fire was put out and the animal died, he slept through the night undisturbed, and he was not put in danger. And so something that we think is wicked or evil turns out in retrospect to be a great blessing in disguise. It's that sort of thing. As for counting the people, it's something that merits going into, but as for the differences between Af Adonai and Satan, they both originate, so to speak, from the same left pillar. Okay, let's see if there's anything here in the chat now. Robert says, what, in your opinion, was Yoav's deal with his uncle, King David? Just the going against him. Going through the Bible chronologically really opens up David's prayers in the Psalms. Yes, it's in the Psalms you see things that were happening to him at the time, and as a consequence he wrote this psalm. Right, just like when Michal let him out the window, he wrote a psalm about that. Well, not about it, but in consequence of it, or in the aftermath of it. What's the deal? You know, he says to him at some point, he says to him, "Ma li velachem bnei Tzuya." He sort of he goes off on the sons of Tzuya, one of them being Yoav, and he says, "What's the deal with you? Are you warmongers? What's the deal? Are you looking for blood?" So I don't precisely know what his deal was. I know that they had some incompatibilities. Let's put it that way. Which is why David told his son Shlomo not to let it slide. He told him, "You're a wise man. You know what to do." Robert Harrison continues and says, "There's also a show called House of David, and they have the Amalek king as a cannibal. Is that biblically true in your opinion?" As far as I know, Amalek, the people or the king, are not portrayed as cannibalistic. But I suppose it is a kind of cannibalistic element for everyone who goes against their human brother and sister, right? Because you're sort of devouring, in a sense, your own people. And, right, this is a world of good and evil, and war exists. Conquest exists. So I'm not going to search for a utopia and say that it should not be. But as for Amalek being a cannibal, I don't know about that. Biblically true? I have no idea. It's possible that in one of the times where Amalek is mentioned, there is a kind of liking it, but I have no idea. I wouldn't know offhand if cannibalism and Amalek are, if they're spoken of right in the same verse or in the same way. Eli says, "Do you love Israel? Tell me yes in English." Yes in English. I love Israel as a people. I love Israel as a land. I love Israel as a philosophy and as a Torah and because we're in a world of good and evil, there are no absolutes. And sometimes, especially with the state of Israel, it can be a real love-hate relationship. And if not hate, just a kind of ugh, you know? But by and large, yes, I do love Israel, and I love living here. I love raising a family here, despite all of the horrible things that go on here. Sneezer says, "Hi, Sneezer." He says, "Likewise, something we may think good, like light, sometimes need to be put out." Yes, that's right. If you stare into the sun for too long, it will harm you. And if Moses, let's say, would not have looked away at the burning bush, it may have harmed him. So sometimes you need to look away. Sometimes you need to darken yourself, like putting on sunglasses, in order to better see in a bright light. And so that act of putting on darkness could be seen by an external observer as something negative, What do you mean? You're shading yourself? There's light. But no, the light can be very, very lethal, so to speak, if you mm, if you don't treat it with care, right? Okay. Robert says, "Can you tell us something interesting or funny that's happened to you in 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 day-to-day life?" In day-to-day? What do you mean day-to-day? Do you mean this day or every day? I mean, interesting or funny? Life with a newborn is always interesting and funny. As my mother always says, kids are a lot of work, but they can be a lot of fun. So every day has its interesting and funny moments. Something interesting? Um, let's put it this way. No, I mean, if something comes to mind that I want to share, I definitely will. Hey, Daniel Levine is here. Hello, Daniel Levine. Only a few chats behind, says Sneezer. I am a proud Zionist, just saying. Yes, well, I am a biblical Zionist and a modern day Zionist, and even though it has its drawbacks and it has its detriments and it has its places where it's ugh, it's still something. It's something worthy of getting behind, and if not in its entirety, then definitely a large part of it, I would say. Okay, so let's go to the chat from yesterday, which I didn't finish. The chat from yesterday. Rusty said, wait, hold on. Okay, Sneezer said, and this is where I stopped. Sneezer said, my roommate is French, so all my racism for French is all in love. Well, that's nice, because I guess you can't be too spiteful unless it's, healthy, humoristic sarcasm. Sneezer continued and said, many of my best friends are American. So, okay, so Canadians laugh at the French and at Americans, he said, but he's got a roommate and friends, so it's all in good fun, all in jest. Rusty said, I had a Belgian waffle for breakfast. You know, that's something that I never had, and now that I've been vegan for like 15 years, hopefully until my grave, I don't think that I will get to have one, but damn, those things look thick, and all the toppings. Later, I'm going to make Frenchman talk bollocks. Frenchman talk bollocks? What do you mean? I don't know what Rusty meant. Rusty said to Sneezer, my hate for the French is because they escort illegal immigrants to our shores. Well, what do you mean? The French do this? I don't know the nature of this. They escort them from Calais to Dover? Yeah, see. I mean, I know that Dover is a city, but Calais? I don't know where Calais is. Or Calais? I don't know where that is, unfortunately. Caleb says, to me, or said, to me we are focused on the principles of flesh, and many are serving the red dragon, seeking wealth and fame. This is not the way to peace and love, but suffering and death. Be in spirit and truth. We are focused on the principles of flesh. Many are serving the red dragon. Well, I'm not sure what the red dragon is, nor am I sure what Caleb means when he says principles of flesh. Wealth and fame is something that people, I guess, always sought out. It's nothing new. It's nothing new. I mean, he didn't say that it's new, I'm just sort of musing. It's not the way to peace and love. I'll tell you, wealth and fame can be a means to an end. And if your aim, and if your end, as it were, is noble and benevolent, and you seek to spread peace and love, then wealth and fame will open up many doors and give you a platform and give you the opportunity. And so it's not whether you seek wealth and fame. That would be permissible. The question is, what is your intent and what is the meaning? What are you driving at? Where are you going? What would you be doing with this wealth and fame? How would you use it? Would you use it for suffering and death, or would you use it for abundance and life and good times? Be in spirit and truth, he says. Spirit and truth. So not flesh and not wealth and not fame, but spirit and truth. I dig that. It's like let your own spirit, your inner spirit guide you, and let the truth guide you. Usually it's the other way around. Usually you start off with that spirit, let's say the spirit of truth stirring inside of you. And then you're able to actually be more truthful if you are stirred by it and it shakes you up enough to do something about it. Sneezer says to Caleb, nothing said in anger from this side. I assume likewise elsewhere. The French steal our fish, said Rusty. They can't drive either. I actually heard that one. I've heard that the French can't drive. But who am I to talk? I just got my license a few months ago. Sneezer says, if I didn't love shaving my head, I'd consider Nazariteship. Shaving is my own form. Feel dirty after even a day of not shaving. Voila. Even after a day of not shaving? Wait, you shave your head every day? Incidentally, the king of Israel used to cut hairs off the top of the head every day for the very same reason that the Nazarite man or woman grow it out wildly. It is the king that had to cut hair every day. Right? It's a question of judgment, and it's a question of what the hair represents. And for the king and the Nazarite, it's a little different, but both are based on the hair. How's it going, my Hebrew, said Wolf's Shans. And that was it. So how's it going? It's going really well. I'm over here. It's 16 minutes in. I've got 5 people watching and 5 likes, and I give thanks and praises. Those watching now, those watching later. I really appreciate it. It's so much fun. I'm going to go to the chat now, right now, the live chat. And afterwards, I'm going to read from the introduction to the book Nazariteship in These Days by Rabbi Uri Einhorn, a Nazarite here in Jerusalem, who a different Nazarite, I heard him call him the Elder Nazarite. So he is supposedly, at least according to that Nazarite, the elder one in Jerusalem. Okay, let's continue. The Kehat Nazarite Samuel killed the Amalek king. Yes, that is correct. Oh, hold on a second. I gotta put my tea bag in a bowl. Okay. I have lemon tea this evening, and I'm very, I'm looking forward to drinking it. Okay. Right, so yeah, Samuel definitely killed Agag according to the Bible, Agag, the king of Amalek. And it's said that if he was a Nazarite, how did he kill him? Because a Nazarite is supposed to abstain from defilement of death. And there are different commentaries on how that could have been, and the way that he was put to death, or the fact that he's a Gentile and not a man of Israel, and so that also has something to do with it. But basically, yes, a Kehat Nazarite, Samuel, the prophet, the Nazarite, the Levite, who also acted a little bit like a priest in certain times. Pay attention, much like Moses, his sire, who was a Levite, but also did priestly duties for a short time. Robert says, I never knew how much Saul's son Jonathan was so a man's man and mighty warrior. Oh my God, yes, him and his, well, not apprentice, what would it be? Him and his squire. They broke upon the ranks of the Philistines, a few times, where it was just the way that the author wrote it there is just lovely. Right, and then that whole thing where he ate from the honey, and he didn't know that his father had forbade the people from, right, that they were fasting and they were forbidden to eat. Never knew how pretty Canada is, Sneezer, says Robert. Very, Rob, mostly empty wilderness. And I think that's also true to Russia, right? It's mostly, or at least great swaths of land are empty wilderness. That's what I love, the empty wilderness, says Robert. Sneezer says, LOL, I think most humans do. Something about nature feels like home. I dare say that is correct. Something about nature does feel like home. And you could argue that people in this modern day and age wouldn't be able to stay off the grid, but I think, I have a feeling that after a while, of course it depends and it varies by temperament and by, well, physical condition, mental condition, and so on and so forth, but I think a lot of people, if you took them off the grid, after a while, if they had a community, they would be able to survive and thrive and really be a home and make it a home. I mean, we lived like that for most of history, right? Out in nature. Sneezer says, even well-meaned wealth usually goes to waste. Well, usually is an important distinction. Usually, here in this context, is a very important distinction. But I know what you mean. I see what you mean. Robert says, seek wisdom like silver, and when you find it, it will be gold. It was in Mishlei, right, in the book of Proverbs, where Shlomo says that if you seek it like gemstones and gold, then you will understand the fear of God, right? Yes, right? There will be knowledge, there will be wisdom, there will be a proper fear of God if you search for it like you would precious stones and metals. Sennheiser says, every day, interesting to seek wisdom. I'm assuming he's referring to that. I always wanted, he says, long straight hair, but it always afros on me. Well, what's wrong with the afro? Hey, Paula is here. So wait, is it, so it's Paula, okay. Now it's Paula. I have loved reading. So wait, was it Paula or Robert that left the comment on the verses, right, on the anger of the Lord and the adversary? Which was it, Paula or Robert? Either way, if you didn't see the comment, and I started off this stream by reading it, so check it out. I have loved reading about David in our Bible reading plan. I love that when he would also mess up, he always came back to God. I love his humility. Yes, there is, right, he is human. He messes up. And incidentally, it was his anniversary of his death just 2 days ago on Shavuot. That's traditionally when King David died. And it's said that King David was so immersed in the Psalms that the angel of death could not touch him because he was bound to the Torah and to his Psalms, and it was like a life-giving force for him. And so the adversary, right, and the angel of death he was cunning, and he had to con him. Right now it slips my mind how it was done, but he had to con him somehow to stop reciting Psalms, and in that moment, or something along those lines, then he was able to take him. Robert asks, when will you write your Nazarite book? I've thought of it many times. I think I am writing a book. And not just the ebooks that I write at work, and not just the scripts that I have waiting in the drawer. I mean a book on the Nazarite ship. I already have an outline, very, very brief outline. Every now and then I revisit it. Every now and then I revisit introductions that I started to write, outlines that I started to flesh out. I never did it. I think I need to be a lot more connected, and I think I need to be a lot less sinful before I can write a book on the Nazarite ship. Or maybe it's just a question of time and the experiences, because I definitely have a more unique experience. I haven't met a Nazarite here in Jerusalem that wasn't a rabbi. By and large, the Nazarites that have been, right, Orthodox rabbis, at least after the destruction of the temple, when it's become more rare. And I will address that right now, the rarity of the Nazariteship in this day. I will address that in the introduction by Rav Uri Einhorn. But when will I write my book? I started this channel a few years ago because I was moved to speak on the Nazariteship. And because I saw, well, a gap in YouTube, a niche that has not been filled, and I love filling it in my own small way, right? The way of the Hebrew Nazarite is something that I didn't find much on YouTube. The only thing I found were references to Rastas and Christians who took it, so to speak, and the Nazariteship in the Torah, and the Nazariteship in the Talmud, and the Nazariteship in the Mishnah, and in Halacha, but not a Hebrew Nazarite streaming, uploading videos. So I decided to fill that gap, or that vacancy. But when will I write a book? I don't know. I would like to. But I would like to have a little bit more humility, a little bit less pride, right? Less hubris. So I don't know when I will write one, but I would definitely love to write a book on the Nazariteship. I definitely would. All right. And speaking of a book on the Nazariteship, I will stop the chat right here. I'll go back to it, and I will read from the introduction to the book Nazariteship in This Day by Rabbi Uri Einhorn, who is still alive and kicking here in Jerusalem. I haven't met him yet, again, because I think I've met a few, but I have not met him yet. I have his number. I tried calling once or twice. He was probably busy. He didn't answer. And then I stopped, and I haven't looked at that number in 2 years. I think that I need to be more. I don't know. Maybe it's just, I don't know. I'm insecure. I'm insecure because of my weaknesses, because of my faults and my frailties and my sinful ways. I'm insecure, right? Because sin, missing the mark, causes you to feel weak. So I need to pick up my strength. I need to become stronger through cleaving more to Torah and the covenant and the commandments. Maybe I'll pick up the phone and call Rabbi Uri Einhorn, and we'll be able to sit and chat. He incidentally leads a group of people, a few of whom are Nazarites, a couple of whom I've met, that have a study group every Thursday night in a book that I bought a few years ago, but have not opened yet. Again, I'm feeling I'm not quite there yet, but I wanted to have it close to me, so when I do feel moved to do so, I'll give him a call. I'll open up the book. I feel I have a lot more prep to do before I can speak to the elder Nazarite of Jerusalem or read Eilima by the Ramak. Okay, so now on to the part of the introduction. And Rabbi Uri Einhorn here speaks of reasons for the rarity of the Nazariteship today. So this book was released about 7 years ago or so, 7, maybe 10 years ago, or maybe a bit less. It could be a bit less. Anyway, within the last decade. I have 2 books here. One called Nazariteship in This Day. I'm going to read from it now. A rough translation that I did on the fly right before I went live. And the other one is Nazir Elohim, Nazarite of God. Another Jerusalem Nazarite by the name of Rabbi Joshua Friedman, who is a rabbi in the Jewish Quarter Yeshiva, the Kotel Yeshiva, and he is a rabbi in the he's part of the Temple Institute. He's a rabbi in the Temple Institute of Jerusalem. Okay, so says Rabbi Einhorn, in the time of the temple, right? So why are there so few Nazarites nowadays? In the time of the temple, he says, most Nazarites were for a set time, right? So as you know, or may not, there are 4 types of Nazarites. And the more common one is a Nazariteship for a set period of time. But you can only do that when there's a temple standing in Zion. So he continues and says, most Nazarites were for a set time, not for life. After the temple was destroyed, there was no longer the option of making a temporary vow, but only a Samson vow, the one I took, or a vow for life. And I know some who took both. And he says this is a greater commitment and is not for everyone, right? If it's something that's only for 30 days, then you can definitely find many people who would be a Nazarite for 30 days and then bring the offerings, shave their head, throw it in the fire, right? Complete the ritual, and they did it. But to have somebody say, no, I want to do this for life, that's a greater commitment, right? It's a more serious, or if not serious, definitely chronologically a greater commitment. And he continues and says, this situation, right, the lack of a temple, this situation has caused the Nazariteship to become rare. Just as 1,000 people go in and learn, but only one of them is found suitable for teaching, and it is necessary for those 1,000 who go in to learn to be there in order to create the environment and conditions for that single teacher to come out of the mix. In the very same way, he says, it is necessary for many Nazarites to be around, in order for one out of 1,000 to make a vow for life. And after the temple fell, the temporary Nazariteship was absent, which directly caused the Nazariteship itself to become removed from the general Jewish consciousness, and hence the number of Nazarites for life dwindled. He continues and says, our enemies knew the value and significance of the Nazariteship and its deep meaning within the context of Israel's redemption, and so they fought it as a standalone phenomena. As it says in the Midrash of Eicha, the external teachings on the Book of Lamentation, it says, quoting from the verse, to our necks we were pursued. Right? Al tzavarenu nirdafnu yaganu v'lo hunach lanu. That's the verse, right? And the first half of the verse means to our necks we were pursued. And the commentary says, the emperor, not the commentary, the teaching, the external teaching, the Midrash, it says, the Roman Emperor Hadrian said to his troops that if a Jew is found with hair, take his head off. Hence, to our necks we were pursued. right? They took off the heads of those who had hair on their head. And Hadrian, the Emperor Hadrian, said, was he an emperor? Or yeah, I think he was an emperor. The Emperor Hadrian told his troops that that the Jews should shave their heads, and if they find a Jew with hair, that they should remove his head. A commentary on that midrash, on that teaching, says that the emperor decreed all Jews to shave their heads, since only the Nazarites grew out their hair. And so if you had long hair as a Jew, it was a mark of your Nazariteship. Now, women do let their hair grow long, again, for reasons of, I won't get into the reasons now, but traditionally speaking, it's men with short hair and two side curls from two sides going down. You grow a certain part of your hair long, you grow your beard long, but not the hair on, not the entirety of the hair on your head. And it has to do with the different revelations that come in through the human being as being the image of God and what the hair represents and so on. But the Nazarites, basically, the Nazarites grew their hair out. It also, the Nazarites are also mentioned specifically by name in the Scroll of Lamentations. He also cites, and this I didn't translate. I'll just say it off. I'll just say it. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, I'll just recite it, not verbatim, of course. He also cites Christianity as being something that sort of annexed the Nazirut, the Nazariteship. Right? We call them monks, we call them friars, we call them nuns. And it's the same sort of deal. You make a vow and you abstain from certain things, right? As far as I know, the mainstream or traditional Christian vow is of chastity, of poverty, and of obedience. Three separate vows. And the Hebrew Nazarite is one vow that is three-faceted. And so he says that the Christians, he doesn't mention Buddhists or others, but he really mentions Christianity there. He said that nowadays, many people, when they hear the word Nazir, they will think immediately of Christians. They will think of nuns, then they will think of priests, right? Catholic priests, for instance, who abstain who are abstinent. Yes, abstinent. And they will think of friars and monks of different sorts who devote their life to God and who swear off worldly pleasures and all that. And he said that the name of Nazarite, now in Hebrew there's no difference. In English we have a Nazarite or a Nazir, and we have monk, friar, nun, and so on. But in Hebrew they're both called Nazir. Nazir Notzri, Christian Nazarite. Nazir Ivri, Hebrew Nazarite. And so because it's the same word in Hebrew, it has become over the centuries very closely attached to Christianity. And many people in Israel do not even know of the Nazariteship, let alone that there are still people who carry that torch and who take it for life nowadays. And some who take it for a set period of time, even though it's halachically not permissible. If they don't keep halacha, it's still a vow, and they still do it. And I won't get into the halacha, but they're still Nazarites to their death according to halacha, even if they don't consider themselves Nazarites. And so he says these are some of the reasons why the Nazariteship is a rarity nowadays. And I'll close this part, and before I go back to the chat, I'll close this part by quoting the Jerusalem Nazarite, Rabbi David HaKohen, who died in 1973, 72, in the 70s. And he said, and I quote this many times, right? And he said, if I only came to this world just for that, to make the name of Nazarite known in the world, and to have people understand that this is something that exists, that would have been worth it. Okay, let's continue with the chat. Sneezer says, now that I've discovered the cooling breeze on a bare scalp, I can't see going long. Yes, you know what? I had long hair, and when I was in yeshiva at age 18, I shaved my head, and as those who follow the channel know, I left a small bit of hair here, and I grew it into side curls. I never shaved off the side curls. The hair just grew, into this, but I had the side curls from the time I was 18. And I still had it when I decided to grow out my hair a bit longer. And I still had them, only they weren't really visible, because they were part of longer hair, shoulder length at the time, when I took my vow. And so the peot, the payas, the side curls, are still part of my hair. And I remember I remember, and I've mentioned this before too, that I was in Tzfat, right, in my yeshiva, and I said, you know what, I'm going to shave my head. I want to shave my head and grow peot. And so I shaved my head. I had long hair. I shaved my head. Well, my friends did it for me. And then I ran to the mikveh. And for the first time in, such a long time, I felt the really cold water on my scalp. A day later, during the morning prayers of Shacharis, Shachrit, Tfilat HaShachar, the morning prayer, I put the tefillin, the phylacteries, for the very first time in a very long time, in years, on my scalp with a shaved head right here. And I know what you mean about that cooling breeze on a bare scalp, and cool water on the scalp, and the touch of the phylacteries of the tefillin on the scalp. And you say you can't see going long. I'll tell you, despite the lovely feeling of water of the mikveh on the head and the phylacteries on the head and the cool breeze on the scalp, I definitely saw myself going long for the long run, for the long haul. Robert says to Sneezer, do the chicks in Canada dig the bald scalp? No, he says, they dig a big wallet. I don't know if that's, some people, to each his own, right? But having a big wallet is definitely, usually an advantage. David, says KJB, very human, very spiritual too, so easy to relate to. Yeah, the warrior poet, the king. The king after Saul, right? The king of Judah. Robert says, I have learned a very important lesson from David, and that's telling God everything that's going on with your life. Yes, I learned this from Rabbi Nachman. I learned this from, Hitbodedut, right? Intimate, secluded prayer. That is a very important lesson. It's like, if you're going to take one lesson away from not necessarily the Torah, but the Bible, right? It's just talk to God. Talk to God. Talk to God. All the time. Every day. Sneezer says also traps the heat. High IQ, deep thought, always hot. Not following you. High IQ, deep thought, always hot. What do you mean? With hair? I don't know what you mean. Ah, it was Paula. Okay, so Paula, you left the comment. I hope that my explanation, I hope that my addressing of your question and your comment was satisfactory. If not, definitely let me know. I'll try and go into a bit more detail. How BMXers with dreadlocks been? Well, I don't know. He hasn't been around. Did he message me recently? I don't know. We message every now and then on Facebook or Instagram or one of them. Incidentally, Hebrew Nazarite across the board on TikTok, and on Instagram, and on Facebook, and on where am I at? Twitter. Like I say, I don't post anything. I use it for the DMs. If you want to hit me up, I'm up for a chat, if I can do it, for a back and forth. It's always fun. Robert says, remind me to buy a copy when you write it. Maybe. First, I need to write it, and it's not currently something I'm actively seeking. But thank you. I do appreciate the vote of confidence. Sneezer says it can be surprisingly easy to write when the Spirit moves you. Exactly. Now, there's discipline and there's inspiration, and discipline always trumps inspiration. And so if I'm inspired to do so, that may be one thing. But if I am moved to do so and I discipline myself, then I definitely will be doing it. And the Spirit that moves me will then only be, let's say, a catalyst, but it won't be what sustains me. And I have been moved in certain times to write about the Nazarite ship, which is why I started writing an introduction a couple of times, and which is why I've written an outline and sort of, a line here, a line there. I have them on my phone and on this computer over here. But nothing came of it yet. Nothing came of it yet. Robert agrees with Sneezer. He says exactly, right? The Spirit moves you. Being understood, on the other hand, said Sneezer, I guess it depends on when the Spirit moves you to write for. Mine are written much more for hindsight historical confirmation. Hindsight historical confirmation. Interesting, said Robert. And I agree, that is interesting. Could you elaborate? What do you mean by historical confirmation? Because it sounds as if the possibility, I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but it sounds as if it's possible then to sort of have a target and then paint, to have the arrow and then paint a target around it. You know what I'm saying? I hope the readers think so, said Sneezer. Or listeners, lol. Likely many more considering the audio is free. So at one point, asks Sneezer, all Jews shaved? So that's according to the Midrash on Eicha, right? The Midrash, the external teachings by our sages on the Book of Lamentations. It says that at least at the time of Hadrian, if there was a point when they all shaved their heads, yeah. But doesn't the Torah command not to shave the sides nor top of your head? So the shaving has to do with ripping out hairs from the root, which is why an electric shaver is permissible, but a razor is not permissible. Likewise with the beard. You can shave with a shaver, an electric shaver, but you cannot shave with a razor if you keep halacha. Nazarite, of course, being an exception. We have many, he says, also strong drink. Well, I don't know what that was in, right? So this was, he wrote that at 10:33. It's now 9 minutes later. I'm not sure what I was talking about at the time. Strong drink, a lot of people, halachically speaking, strong drink that is mentioned in the book of Numbers is strong drink that has wine in it, grape wine. Me, I drink only in remembrance of him. He says, Sneezer continues and says, I figure me thinking it mean Nazarene is kind of normal for a Western Christian. I'm not sure what you mean. I figure me thinking it means Nazarene is kind of normal for a Western Christian. I'm not sure what you mean, man. I hope you can dumb it down for me. Question, HN. What do you know of 369 in Kabbalah? Well, first of all, it depends entirely on what Kabbalah you mean. Which school of thought, which type of Kabbalah are you talking about? Pre-Lurianic, post-Lurianic, for instance. But, well, 3, 6, and 9? I mean, 3 is closely correlated to the top 3 sfirot, right? The higher revelations, the higher emanations. 6 is closely associated with the middle pillar of Tiferet, right, which encompasses what's called the 6 tips, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. That is also the 6, is what makes up the 6-pointed star known as the Star of David, or Magen David, or the Jewish hexagon. As for 9 has to do with the sfirot, right? Either without the crown or without the kingdom. And when I say without, there are always 10, not 11, not 9, 10 sfirot. However, the number 9 has a great deal to do with the sfirot because it's the 10th sfirah, the 10th emanation called kingdom, malchut, which is like the moon. It has no light of its own. It only reflects that which is being shown upon it or shined on it. And in that sense, it's the 9 that feed into that 10th one, that on the one hand has nothing of itself and it's an empty vessel, but on the other hand it is filled and it's what eventually is revealed. Not the first 9, but only the last 10, the final 10th. Right? Our world exists, as it's known, in Malchut, in that kingdom of God, if you will, in that 10th Sphira, a place that is an empty vessel, that takes the divine revelations from above and manifests them here in accordance with what was given, right, and how it was received. So that's my immediate association. Robert says, is it more difficult being a Nazarite in a non-temple period? Well, no, I would think that it's much easier to be a Nazarite without a temple, because it's for a life. And because, especially if you're a Samson Nazarite, who doesn't need to worry about defilement of death, it's, I don't think it's more difficult. I think it's much easier being a Nazarite nowadays, because you don't have to worry about, you don't have to worry about bringing any offerings or sacrifices. You're in it. You're all in. temple or no temple. Maimonides, the Rambam, very famously says, Nizirut noheged bizman habayit v'shelo bizman habayit, right? That the Nazariteship is there with a temple or without a temple. That's the halacha that he ruled. Now, some people say that he was wrong to rule that specific halacha, and they say that without a temple there ought to be no Nazariteship. But I definitely think that the Nazariteship exists without a temple, and it definitely should. Definitely should. Sneezer says it's somehow becoming noticed that Jesus was crucified in the 3rd hour. Darkness fell in the 6th noon, and he died in the 9th. Also in the parable of the vineyard, the owner goes out at those hours, and also the 11th. Hey, Ariel Marshall is here. What do you mean by it's somehow becoming noticed? Have you noticed people in your circle talking about it? Have you listened to different sermons or Christian... what have you been listening to in that context that you're saying that it's somehow becoming noticed? I'm curious. Ariel Marshall is here. Hello, lads. Hope you are doing well, he says. Yes, we are. I am doing very well. I give thanks to the Most High, and for you people here for being here. I have 8 people here watching. What fun. And I have 5 likes. I've been on for now 46 minutes now. It's lovely. Being in deep thought. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. It skipped. Here. Sneezer says, being in deep thought makes your brain run high temperature. Oh, I see. Yes. I've had several instances where I was in meditation or the silent prayer of Amidah, and I would stand there or sit for a very long time sometimes, and it wasn't just my brain that elevated its temperature, or maybe it was just me perceiving it that way, but I definitely felt heat. Whether it was like psychosomatic or not, I don't know, but in meditation and in silent prayer of Amidah, right? Silent prayer or silence, standing, sitting, whatever the case may be. Not just my brain rose, and it's like I felt these currents of electricity and heat through my body, and I probably haven't felt that. Well, no. I suppose I felt it recently because of something else that happened, but forget what I said. Either way, I've been in deep thought or in deep meditation or in deep prayer, and I've had that feeling, not saying that was the case, but I've had the feeling of temperature rising, if only by a few tenths of a degree or whatnot. It still makes a difference when it's your body heat. Sneezer says, I seem to remember BMX being here the last week or two. Yeah, it could be. Look, I haven't been broadcasting much. I broadcasted yesterday and now, I think, 2 days in a row. I don't know when was the last time I did that. Maybe I did it recently, maybe not. But I'm so very happy that it's the parasha, the Torah portion of Nazarite Awareness Week. Sneezer says, whenever the video before yesterday, I remember because I looked it up to see when I broadcasted, was May 14th. So it was about 3 weeks ago, 2.5, 3 weeks ago. So he was here. Okay. So, I guess he's doing well. I don't remember if he's been in touch in the DMs or not. Robert says, I finally found out why Batsheva was bathing naked on the roof. She was honoring the Lord's commandment by purifying herself. Well, it doesn't say tovelet. It says rochetzet, if I'm not mistaken. So she was bathing naked, but it's not a mikveh. If a woman... Wait. Do you mean purifying herself from menstruation? Or do you mean purifying herself outside of the purification of menstruation or of after the blood ceases? Because it depends. For the blood of... Right, for the period blood and the period of the period to be over, a woman needs to go to a kosher mikveh. And not all mikvahs are kosher for that specific intent. However, if it's just for general purity and not for a specific thing like menstruation blood, then then you can go to a different mikveh, which can be on the roof. Now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure which. So it might have been bathing rather than immersion in a mikveh. But either way, whether it's this or that, she was honoring the Lord's commandment by purifying herself. So, okay, the Lord's commandment. So I'm assuming that you're talking about that she had her period and she then stopped bleeding, and so she went to the mikveh. I'm assuming that's what you're saying. Ariel says, so that's why we get headaches when trying to interpret our partner's actions? Ha 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 ha. Sneezer says, I very much disagree. Inspiration from the Spirit is far stronger than any continual effort. That's why musicians usually make hit singles and otherwise unknown. You know what? While there is something to that, because there's something of that spirit that is very, well, it hits you differently. But if you're talking about the long term, discipline does trump inspiration, right? Or muse. Muse and inspiration can get you going, but it's discipline more often than not that will sustain you throughout the process, right? At least I think. Paula says, Jonathan, have you heard of the book that former hostage Eli Sharabi wrote? I heard that an English version will come out soon. I really want to read it. Now, look, as you know, or might know, I read the headlines, but usually no more than that, because I can't. It breaks my heart. It tears me apart to read of these accounts of what these people went through. And just like I didn't see the Hamas footage, and I could definitely, easily, in a few clicks, watch the raw, unedited, graphic gore of what Hamas did there that day. And I choose not to do it. Just like I choose not to watch the recording of the plane going into the Twin Towers, because I didn't watch it at the time, and I've never watched it. Because it's something that happened, and I don't want to watch people die. It's not something... Now, you might say, no, it's part of reality. You need to face it head on. Maybe I'm weak in this regard. Maybe I'm clinging to life too much to be with such emissaries of death. And Hamas is, as Douglas Murray calls them, a death cult. So if you have the stamina, the fortitude to read such things, go for it. And do it, for us sinners who are too dainty and delicate to read the accounts of things that happened there. And those of you who can stomach watching the raw footage of Hamas butchering and raping, and by all means do it. I can't. I definitely can't. I can't. God set the arrow, I painted the target. I see. I see what you mean, Sneezer. Ariel says, not sure you would be purifying yourself very well if you choose a poor scenario for the mitzvah, LOL. Well, look, a mikveh is still a mikveh, and a kosher tvilah, right? A kosher immersion is indeed kosher. So even if the surrounding environment, the scenario, the circumstances are not ideal and it's not very well, technically, halachically, physically, practically, it is a kosher mikveh and it is a kosher immersion, which would take her out of the impurity into purity. And again, I'm not talking about cleanliness and uncleanliness in a physical thing, even though blood is involved with menstruation. I'm talking about the fact that purity and impurity, tum'ah v'tahara, in this case, speaks of a kind of spiritual inadequacy that prevents you from doing this, that, or the other. So let's get that straight right now. It's not that period blood is dirty and women are dirty. No. We're all dirty. We're all bloody. We have many forms of vow, like Nazariteship. Strong drink being a common one. Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. So you're saying that a lot of Christians take a vow of abstinence from strong drink? Lemon. Good tea. Sneezer says, I used to think Nazarite meant Nazarene. Now I know better. So yes, Nazarene means a man or woman of Nazareth. Nazarite means somebody who has taken, a man or woman who has taken the Nazarite vow. Shalom from West Kentucky all, says Bong, James Bong. Shalom, shalom from Robert and Ariel. Tetragrammaton, Greek 4 letters. Yes, that's right. That's the Yod He Vav He name is known as the Tetragrammaton for the 4-letter name. But there are many 4-letter names, but that's the 4-letter name. Sneezer says HN. So do you know anything multiplied by 9 will result in digits that sum to 9? Likewise with 3, but also 6 and 9. Well, yes, I knew that about the 9. One of the main reasons 3 is considered a magic number. Well, you know, there are 3 pillars, there are 3 higher sfirot, there are 3 patriarchs. There's a lot of 3s. Right, there's the priests and the Levites and the Israelites. A lot of 3s. And 9, an eternal one. Robert says, now the Nazarite's body is the temple. Well, the human being's body is the temple, right? If we go back to Eden, before we split into so many groups and nations and tongues and religions and whatnot, we were made in the image of God in Eden, and that means that we all have the capacity to embody that divine image and to bring it forth into creation and to affect real change in the world and to be creators and to be, right, like the creator herself. Hey, my woman is here. Somehow becoming noticed because Tesla fans have always wondered about 369, never connecting it to Jesus. Well, I don't know anything about Tesla, so I don't know the context of 369. Is it the model of Tesla, 369? She says, hi, hello, woman. Suddenly, you just start pouring sweat, said Sneezer. What's Peace Hurwitz up to? Oh, see, you think his name is Peace. No, that's his middle name. His first name is Itai. His second name is Shalom, that means peace. What's he up to? He is blissfully sleeping. Hi, his woman, said Sneezer. Robert says, how much stock do you put in dreams sleep? What do you mean dreams sleep? Do you mean dreams or sleep? I'm not sure what you mean. How much stock do you put in dreams sleep? I don't know what you mean, Robert. If you mean in dreams, then it depends if it's a recurring dream, and it depends if it's a, let's say, divinely, if you will, inspired dream, where your unconscious mind makes a connection with the spiritual realm, and it's being projected through a series of images, but it's not like the other dreams that you have that have to do with long or short-term memory and with digestion, let's say, and the different things that go on, but something that is truly of a more, let's say, divine nature, the more of a soul dream, if you will. I set my life based on dreams, said Sneezer. Exceptionally rare for me. I think the Tanakh says purification. No, what the Tanakh says is after, if we're talking about the same thing, after Bathsheba and David have intercourse, then they both need to go to the mikveh in order to go from being impure to being pure, right? Because there are different types and levels of purity and impurity. The menstruation period is one kind of impurity and spiritual inadequacy. And the impurity and uncleanliness, if you will, of intercourse and semen emission is also something that has a different type of purification associated with it, right? Right? If you emit semen, you can go to a specific mikveh and it will be fine, but that mikveh won't necessarily take you out of the impurity of menstruation. So it's a little different for men and women. Nowadays, without a temple, the only halachically proper, if you will, purity and impurity to do with a mikveh is the woman's mikveh after 7 days, or halacha now is 14 days, but the Torah says 7 days. I mean, it can be 14, it can be whatever. 7 days, and 7 days of cleanliness after she stops seeing the blood, and it's a whole thing. So yes, the Tanakh says after she sleeps with the king, then it says, Hi mitkadeshet mitum'ata. And interestingly, it doesn't say Hi mitaheret mitum'ata. It doesn't say that she was purified from her impurity. It says she was sanctified from her impurity. It doesn't say purified, it says sanctified. Hi mitkadeshet, from the word kodesh, that has meaning. Okay, Sneezer says they used to be almost a what there used to almost be a plodge. I don't know what that means. Is that a word? What's plage mean? Is it a oh, I'm sorry, it's not a plage, it's a plague. A plague? I think you meant a plague. I don't know, man. I don't know. They used to almost be a plague, had to hypnotize myself to stop. So you're talking about the dreams. You hypnotized yourself in order to stop dreaming. That's interesting. How do you manage that? When the Spirit is working, he says, through you, it's obvious, but that is not inspiration. No, that's not inspiration. That's already the Spirit embodying you, so to speak, be it the body, the mind, however you want to call it. And it's moving you to act in a certain way. But that initial lightning of muse, that lightning burst of inspiration, that sudden understanding, the aha moment, the time when a connection is made in a split second and many understandings flow from it, that's the type of thing that you can't count on. You can't bank on it. What you can bank on, let's say in this context, is if you immerse yourself in Torah and in prayer, you can definitely bank on understanding coming your way if you go into it with a kind of simplicity of I'm going to figure out how to do the Lord's will and how to better myself as a human being. Very humble, very simple, very authentic. Then things that authentically, simply, humbly have to do with you will be manifested to you. And you will begin to see certain things that are shining and calling out to you from life and from the different books, and you'll be able to discern things that have more to do with you and your specific soul or splinter of a soul, right, and your own spirit. So that lightning flash of inspiration is one thing. What the Spirit does when it resides in you, so to speak, is another. Again, these are maybe subtle differences, maybe it's just minutia and I shouldn't even bother myself with talking about it, but I do see discipline still. Because Torah and commandments is a yoke, it's a work, it's toiling, right? And it means that you need to put yourself under there. What does Jeremiah say in the book of Lamentations? He says it is good for a man to carry a burden in his youth. Tov lagever ki gisa ole b'ne'orav. It's like you take on the yoke of Torah, and then you can maybe hope for bursts of inspiration. But it's the discipline that comes first, which is why bar mitzvah is 13. At the beginning of your transition to adulthood, that's when you're not at the end of it, when you can make a more informed decision. No, it's discipline first. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. On the other hand, what do we see with the covenant of circumcision? We see that it's above consciousness in a way that it's done to an 8-day-old male Hebrew baby before they can give consent, before they know what consent is, before they are aware of themselves and the world around them, before there's any kind of anything, there is the covenant. There is that idea of putting something in your flesh. And there's a certain spirit that is revealed, because what you do with the covenant of circumcision is you uncover the penis, you cut off the foreskin, and it's revealed, right? And the penis, if you will, is revealed. In the very same way, there's a certain cover that is taken off. And when you have the covenant of circumcision as a Hebrew man, I mean, again, you could argue, of course, but let's not go there now. It facilitates later revelations when you reveal that life-giving organ, right? Because you bring life into creation with your penis, and you, in the very same way, when you reveal it by cutting off the foreskin, you're able to reveal things to yourself later. That's, I mean, it's an Abrahamic tradition, and Abraham had many revelations. Let's continue. What music are you listening to lately? Well, just earlier today I was listening to my kid on the piano. That dude is talented. He is talented. He loves jazz. He does not like classical. And I keep telling him, look, if there was no classical, there would be no jazz. Classical is right, it's the foundation of so many things that you consider to be awesome. It won't hurt you to be also into the classical music and but he's a jazz man. He's a jazz man. So what music am I listening to lately? Well, today what was I listening to? Today I listened to some Pink Floyd. Today I listened to some Monica Six, which is an Israeli band. Their first album was released in 1993 or 4. This is the album of the ultimate album of my own puberty and adolescence. The album that I would listen to when I was happy. It's an album I listened to when I was sad. I would shed tears to this album, feeling down and depressed and lonely and different, not knowing what the hell is going on with me and hating myself and and in good times too. So Israeli music and other music. And again, and my kid on the piano. Two of them, well, 2 out of the 4. We're playing piano today. So that's what I was listening to now today. Best not to focus on death. Yes, the Torah says choose life. The Torah says that death is a part of everything, sure, here in this world, a knowledge of good and evil, but it will be taken away when we partake of the fruit of the tree of life. And so death is a temporary thing. As opposed to many who would think that life is temporary and death is forever. The Torah says, no, it's death that's temporary. Christianity is a lie, says Dean Ally. Hello, Dean Ally, or Ally. Okay, why is Christianity a lie as far as you're concerned, if you're still here? Because he wrote this at 10:56, and it's now 11:08, so it's been about 12 minutes. I hope that he's still here. Dean, if you're still here, please. I'll bet people contradicted you in the chat. Let's plow right ahead here and see. So Nezer says, a lot of Christian communities, especially Mid-East USA, are dry. No alcohol at all. Wow, so entire communities that are dry. It's interesting because alcohol is so prevalent and it's so, it's condoned by the government, right? And prohibition didn't last too long. Robert says, Jerry Seinfeld said vacation means arguing in a hotel room to him. Yeah. He's got a lot of interesting things to say about marriage, and because he married later, it comes from like a different perspective, because he had a long stretch of being single and engaged for a long time, and he broke that off, and so eventually when he married and had kids, it was later in life, and so he's got obviously some of the same perspectives, and a few different perspectives, I think. Arguing in a hotel room, yeah. So Nezer says, despite wine being part of the sacrament, LOL. Well, I'm assuming that for the sacrament you can take some wine and it won't be negating your dryness, right? Or do they mean completely and not even taking part? What is it? It's communion, right? That's what it's called? I bet if you look through the Torah for 369 combinations, you'll find tons. Well, there's a lot of text in the Torah, and there are 70 facets, 70 faces, 70 ways to interpret the Torah, as it says. And there's 4 different levels of Pshat, Remesh, Drash, Sod. It's like you can find everything if you look for it. It was obviously important to Jesus, said Sneezer. Maybe it was. James Bong says, HN, you can technically have a beer if you wanted one. Yes, as long as it doesn't contain grapes. That is correct. Technically, I can, but I took it on not as a vow in and of itself, but as like an addition that is not a vow, but I took it on. So yes, I could have any alcohol that has no grapes in it. Any alcohol that is not derived of grapes I can have, but I choose not to. You should do a Google search on Tesla and 369, said Sneezer. Will explain a lot. Toroidal math may help. See, the mere fact that you said toroidal is already way above my pay grade. I have no idea what that means. Trinity originates from Egypt, no? Says Ariel. I'd say probably not, said Sneezer. The Vedic knew about 369. Well, the Vedas being Hindu, right? Sneezer continues and says, probably more Atlantean. Atlantean as in Atlantis? Sneezer says, by the way, the fractal of Sneeze is the full 369 pattern and can be Googled. I love a good fractal. There's a fractal of Sneeze? What does it look like? The fractal of Sneeze? No, I don't... Is it something that you came up with, or is it a proper fractal, you know... or is it your fractal? I'm curious. Robert says, before they committed adultery while David was being tempted. Before they committed adultery? David's still my guy. Well, if you read the commentary, and again, it's just commentary, if you read the commentary, you see that it wasn't adultery because, or at least according to one commentary, her husband Uriah was on the front lines, or at least in the battle. With, oh, who was it? Was it the Moabites? No. Ammonites? I don't recall. And the fighting men, the warriors, would give their women a get, right? They would divorce them, or rather give them the option of divorce, because they didn't know if they would be coming back or not. They didn't know if their bodies would be recovered or not. And so they gave their wives a divorce papers in some way. So when David slept with Bathsheba, right, she wasn't halachically married, something like that. Now you can say, come on, you're just nitpicking, and it's a technicality, and it's, come on, he sinned. If he didn't sin and miss the mark, then the prophet would not chastise him and rebuke him. But what is important to understand is that, oi, there's a little doodle. I think I need to go. I'll give him a few seconds. He shouldn't be awake now. It's 11:15 p.m. He should be asleep. He should remain asleep. Oh, he might want some food. All right. The doodle is awake. I need to cut this short. God willing, I will be here maybe even tomorrow at 10 p.m., continuing Nazarite Awareness Week. I hope to read the rest of the chat tomorrow. And I need to go now. And I thank you for being here, each and every one of you. I deeply appreciate it, your time, your kind attention, your engagement, your likes, your views, your subs. It's all wonderful. And I thank you for being here. Until next time, sorry I need to cut it short. Good night from Jerusalem.